What's going on, guys? My name is Luis Raza, and welcome back to another episode of Crushing It, a podcast dedicated to inspiring young individuals to pursue their passion by showcasing other individuals who are doing exactly that. Again, I'm your host, Luis Raza, but before we jump into today's episode, I want to give a huge shout out to the Herb Keller Center of Entrepreneurship here on campus, your starting point and launchpad for all things related to startups. So meaning whether you need founder resources, whether you need funding for your business, or you're just looking to pitch your idea to mentors and investors to refine it, there are the people that can help you out. So make sure you visit the link in the description below or comment your idea and we'll go ahead and get you connected. Now, on to today's episode. Now, today's guests are Katherine and Atreya Misra, founders of Flo Recruit, a personalized recruitment software. In the past year, they've raised over $240,000 in seed funding and have been accepted in the past summer into prestigious programs such as SEAL, powered by the Austin Technology Incubator. Outside of Flo Recruit, Katherine co-founded Genesis, UT's first startup fund for students, and last year helped shatter the horn-raiser record by raising over $1.2 million to continue to fund student entrepreneurs. Katherine came to UT Austin after receiving the 40-acre scholarship, UT's premier full-ride merit-based scholarship, and worked at high-growth startups like TrendKite in Austin and Handshake in San Francisco. Her co-founder Atreya is pursuing a Ph.D. in electrical and computer engineering with a focus in machine learning here at UT, claiming the highest graduate fellowship available. As an undergraduate at UT Austin, Atreya actively researched different ways to apply machine learning to healthcare and security data and continues this research in his Ph.D. Please join me in welcoming Katherine and Atreya Misra.
This podcast is really interesting for me because I've been following your journey since the very beginning, and you've butted into some of the most inspirational founders on campus. The words of Ashley Jennings, and so just I want to go individually because you both are very, very accomplished individuals, and I want to know your story individually. How were both of you guys exposed to the entrepreneurship scene?
Sure. For me, I didn't even know that the word entrepreneurship existed in high school. I came to UT and I originally was in the petroleum engineering program, and I absolutely hated it. You couldn't pay me enough to look at another Pebble again, and I'll probably never move to Midland, Texas either. And so honestly, I was looking for something to tell my parents that I was enjoying at UT. And luckily I stumbled across the Freshman Founders Program, which is currently under the Longhorn Entrepreneurship Agency. I got in and that really just changed my life. I had the opportunity to meet entrepreneurs over coffee in downtown. I found myself skipping class more and more to instead go hang out in offices of different entrepreneurs. And I think I was just intoxicated by this idea of getting to work on the technical side, helping to build a product, but also on the very soft skills side, talking to potential customers. And lo and behold, I really just started getting involved on campus. I was one of the co-founders of Genesis as well, which is UT's first startup fund for students. And luckily, after starting a variety of other failed ventures, I started Flo Recruit, and since then I've been working on that. So for me, kind of fumbling into entrepreneurship was something that I found after really not finding any fulfillment in my major.
Okay, and what about you?
It started sort of in high school when I was deciding between UT Austin and the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I was looking for a strong engineering program, and both were about equivalent. But what really set aside UT is when I came to Austin. I've been coming to Austin since I was a kid because my uncle lives here, and he went to UT as well. And he kind of urged me to come here, not just for the fact that Austin's an amazing city, but also for the fact that UT is really connected with industry and entrepreneurship. My uncle himself is on his third company, all successful from what I gather. And he's been a real inspiration to me in terms of joining entrepreneurship. Now, after coming to UT, I didn't actually do anything very entrepreneurial until I actually met Katherine. After I met her, we immediately started working on this project together. It was actually sort of really quick. About a week into us meeting, we were already coworkers and now co-founders. But she really made me do a deep dive into entrepreneurship at UT. So she was like, you have to join LEA, you have to be involved with entrepreneurship events on campus, and after that, I've sort of been all about the entrepreneurship thing.
And how did she approach you? So what did she tell you, oh, I'm working on this project, or how did that conversation flow?
So there are two sides to this story. How about you tell your side, and then I'll tell my side.
Okay.
Yeah, from our end, we had been working on Flo, but we were really trying to find a technical co-founder, someone to join our team. And I was finding it pretty impossible. I was trying to post in computer science Facebook groups and totally getting laughed out of there, and trying to work with other technical members of different majors on campus, but found pretty quickly that I couldn't compete with the salaries of Apple and Google and other startups downtown. And so one day, luckily, I was invited to present at the NOBI meeting, which is a organization for engineering and business students. And I simply talked about my entrepreneurial journey and talked about Flo, which at the time we were selling into student organizations, specifically sororities and fraternities. And I got lucky that Atreya came up to me afterwards and said he wanted to work on something. I was like, where have you been hiding this whole time? So that's kind of how we met from my perspective.
Okay, so from my perspective, I was in a class that ended at 6:30, so that was fun. But at 6:30, I was planning on going home. Then my friend Manny Salvatierra, shout out to you, he texted me. He's like, hey, I'm going to this NOBI meeting right now. Do you want to like come join me? It's like my first time going. And my friend Michael Lanham is like the president of that organization, so let's go check it out. And I'm like, sure, whatever, I'll go. And then I went there. There were 3 presenters. One of them was working at Exxon. I think they were all engineers. The second one, I can't remember. Then Katherine was the third one. And then she was describing her entrepreneurship journey, and she started talking about her current venture, which was Flo. And then all that was going through my head is, she developed that? Like, no way. And then I sort of asked her, like, during her presentation, I'm like, how did you develop this? Like, I thought it was really impressive that she was able to put the company together, and as well as the software. And she's just like, funny you ask that. We're actually looking for a developer right now. So I was like, hey, like, this seems like a great opportunity to learn a lot and kind of get exposed to something new. Because all of my technology experience had been from classroom work as well as academic work, doing research on campus. So it was kind of interesting to get sort of an entrepreneurship view of that or a corporate view of that. And Katherine was willing to provide that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll just add there that the difference between Atreya and almost any other potential technical co-founder that we talked to, Atreya wanted to join the team and be a part of the team and build this thing. Every other person we talked to wanted cash that we didn't have, because of course, you know, who's to say that Flo was going to be successful? Who's to say that it is going to be successful? So we were lucky that Atreya totally refused money. He wanted to be on the team, and so we set up this proposal that he would work for a few months, and we would have this trial period and see if we both liked working with each other. And then after that, we started actually dicing up the company and making sure that he had an equity stake in it as well.
So in a way, you kind of got lucky with Atreya, right? So a lot of people that like are trying to pursue entrepreneurship and like trying to like start their own startup, they don't get as lucky. They're like going out there and trying to like find their co-founders in any place that they can, right? So what advice would you have for them?
Why don't you go first then?
Yeah, the advice I give other younger entrepreneurs on campus is that you really just have to tell everyone and anyone about your idea, because you have no idea who knows who on campus. So for us, I guess in a way that we got lucky that finally we met Atreya at a student organization meeting, but in reality, just going to that meeting took probably 3 to 4 months of us trying to present at any other student organization, going to computer science meetups and desperately trying to find someone. So my dad has this phrase that he used to always say growing up, that's the harder you work, the luckier you get. And that what I think is what defines my outlook on entrepreneurship. So yes, we worked really hard to find someone, and we got extremely lucky that at this random meeting, we met Atreya.
Okay.
Yeah, in my opinion, it really has to do with the network you have, especially on campus. So from what I've seen, for example, there's someone named Aruj, she's a sophomore right now, and she approached me and she's like, you must know a lot of tech people, like, can you introduce me to someone? And I knew that she was a freshman at the time, and my best friend Daniel, his little brother Jacob, was also a freshman, and he was studying electrical and computer engineering. So I was like, hey, like, this could be like a perfect matchup in terms of people trying to get something off the ground. So I introduced them, and they're co-founders right now. They've been working together for 9 months now, and
on Fuse
it really,
8, right?
huh?
Fuse 8?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It really had to do with just the network. Like, she knew that I would know a lot of technical people, and then I was just able to find the right person.
Wow, it's a small world. She was actually in my freshman founders class.
Yeah.
Yeah, so personal personal recruitment at scale, that's that's your tagline, right? And I want to know what that kind of entails to you guys.
So our big vision in the end is to be able to allow companies to recruit in a way that makes the candidate feel like they're actually reaching out to that specific person, and also gives the ability for employees in the company to have a bigger stake in the recruiting process. Our really other main passion as a part of this company is basically uncovering a way for us to understand the bias going on within recruitment at the very top of the funnel for each of the companies we work with, so we can actually deliver back to them their own unique prejudices and they can attack it internally. So when we talk about personal human recruiting at scale, it's because we see companies resorting to pen and paper and really just having a flurry of resumes sitting around, and that doesn't work, and they know it when they're trying to have that personalized recruitment process with each candidate they see. And so they default to just hoping that the person applies online. And Flo, we hope in the future, will continue to be that way, that they connect personally with candidates.
From my opinion, for example, you were talking about bias. There's something that a lot of companies aren't gathering, and that's that interaction at that very first touch point during an event. So for example, let's say I was interviewing you, and I knew, okay, I'm looking at your resume, oh wait, he's the guy I'm gonna meet. So I'm prepared kind of the type of person you're gonna be, if you know what I'm saying. So because I'm prepared, some of that unconscious bias sort of goes away, and I'm able to interview you like I would normally. But let's say I'm at a career fair, then I'm meeting all these people and I'm just meeting them. The first thing I see is their face. And before I see their resume, before I see anything. So as a result of that, we believe, and we're yet to prove this out, that there is an unconscious bias going on during that interaction. And the problem with that is no one else is really recording the data of the feedback that those candidates are given right now at scale. So what we would like to do is really gather that feedback, aggregate all that data, and prove out the fact that there is subconscious bias, and it's going on at that very first touch point.
Wait, so if you were interviewing me, you said that you'd have my profile, basically my resume. How do you know that you won't have some sort of bias just by looking at my profile? You see my picture and everything, so there's still bias in that aspect as well, right? So how does that differentiate from the career fair?
So a lot of the time, employees are trained before interviews to interview different types of candidates. For example, if I was a man and I was interviewing a woman, my HR department will prepare me for how that interview should go. However, we were at Campus Recruiting Forum a couple days ago, and all of the recruiters were talking about how when they send employees to networking events or career fairs, they really aren't prepared on anything whatsoever. Sometimes they do a poor job, and as a result of that, because they're not prepared, they're not really prepared for any sort of bias that would go on during that process.
Okay. And so you guys have raised over $240,000 for your startup so far, right? And I want to know how long that kind of took you guys and what advice you have for people in the entrepreneurship community here at UT on how they can fund their own startups, because I know that's a huge thing right now.
I would say that we got really far without any funding. So I think that would be my first point to make. We were working on this for, I believe, over 2 years before we even decided to seek funding, and that's because we knew that with the safety net of school that we could continue to go out there and build this product and meet customers without necessarily raising any funding. So it's really just as of recent that we've been ready to take Flo to the next level and really understand what we can actually do with that funding. That being said, again, with this funding, it's the harder you work, the luckier you get. We've been networking with potential investors and entrepreneurs in Austin since we started this, and it was more from a authentic viewpoint of how can we learn from these people who are experienced and already in the field. So when it did come time for fundraising, it was a lot easier to leverage our network and start to find those potential investors. Even our main angel investor today, we met through, I was speaking on campus and his business partner happened to be in the room, and that person made the introduction. So I think, again, it just boils down to that element of luck, but also the element of we worked so hard to get to that point so that when we were in the right time in the right place, that transaction happened seamlessly.
So do you think that it's bad that a lot of students go out and seek funding before their product is even built out, they actually seek funding to build the product itself?
I don't personally think it's necessarily bad, but I think that the opportunity that school and this university in particular gives is that there's the ability to build a product and build a solution to something and really understand that problem before you go out and try to raise angel funding, for example. Of course, there's things like Genesis on campus, which I'm partial to, which allows you to get a couple $1,000s. And in my opinion, that's really all you need to start getting off the ground. And for us, we didn't even take that initial couple $1,000s to get our current product off the ground.
Okay.
Yeah, and going off that, what you were saying about school, I feel like school is the best time to start one of your own ventures. For example, if you're 25, you might not have obligations like a family or kids, but you will have the fact that you need to sort of fund yourself through life.
Mm-hmm.
One of the huge benefits of school is that, I mean, she's a smart one. She was a 40-acre scholar. I was funded through school by my parents. But even now in grad school, being on fellowship, I'm able to have that sort of fallback of funding, like to fund myself while being able to work on something and not have to seek resources from the company for my own funding. So as a result, I believe, even though we're distracted with classes and everything, Flow really grows a lot because of the fact that we're not really on that hunger to be dependent on Flow. Or, do you know what I'm saying?
Is it like you're kind of like building it on the side while you're doing school? So
Yeah.
that's what it allows you to do.
Exactly.
Okay, so, and this is like, we talked about this while coming up, and this is one of my favorite stories because it really highlights that, you know, not everything is like, it's not easy. You have to work really hard in this space to actually get anywhere, and it's about Halloween weekend, right? And we both were in the Disrupt Texas competition, and I was heading up to the collab. If you don't know what the collab is, it's like a co-working space for people that are trying to build their own company. And so I headed up there, and I was like, there's no way anyone's going to be here right now, and I'll have the full place to myself. I can pitch practice, right? Waited like 30 minutes, and it turns out you both were pitching and practicing as well in like the room across from me, right? And that kind of highlights the point that you don't get everything easy. And I want to know, like, are there a lot of moments where you give up these leisure activities? Like, you could have easily been out like having fun and partying with your friends just like everyone else, right? But have there been like some very key moments in your life where you've had to give up that leisure in order to work on Flow?
So one story that I have that I thought is super funny was, this was in March, and we were actually working in the collab, and I saw Katherine come in like a tie-dye shirt and like, I don't know, she was dressed up for Roundup, basically. But she came, she didn't get drunk that morning, thankfully, but she came to work because we needed to work, and she was giving up, you know, partying for Flow.
Yeah, I would say that I think I did a lot of that in college. Yes, I attended my fair share of parties, I won't dispel that, but in the end, I was involved in a sorority during my time at UT, or I guess I'm still here, and there were many times when I missed a ton of the social events that were planned because I was working on Flow. And for me, often it wasn't a question. Like, yes, it was a huge bummer that I had to miss this social event, and frankly, I was paying to be a part of this sorority, so it felt not good to have to miss stuff. But in the end, Flow was something that I knew that I had to prioritize. So for sure, to your question, there are many times where I feel like I've missed out because we're working on Flow. But for me, this is the most fun thing that I could possibly be doing in my 4 years while I'm here at school. Well, I guess 5 now. While I'm here at school for the past 5 years, because it's that opportunity to just build something that many people don't get in their entire lives. Like, I think that we both feel a sense of fulfillment every time we get a new customer, every time we help a new company recruit their top talent, and that's something that most people never have the chance to experience.
Okay, so then outside of like, you know, missing social activities and stuff like that, those are like the leisures of college, but have you had to make any sacrifices like in life in general that has like led you to build Flow to what it is today?
While you think about it, I can go ahead. So last December, I was in an especially awkward position because I wanted to work on Flow, but if let's say, I was applying to grad schools at the time as well, and let's say grad school didn't work out and we still wanted to work on Flow, it would have been really hard for me given that I couldn't really fund myself to work on it. Like, living in Austin wouldn't have been an option if I didn't have a job. Like, I would have needed to get a job. So there was a point in time, this was like this January and February, where I was convinced that I was going to be a software engineer at Microsoft as opposed to continuing on this. But then I got the good news that I got into grad school at UT, and on top of that, like, it was fully funded, which was just an amazing opportunity. So instead of having to be a boring engineer at a big company, I could work on something I was passionate about while going to grad school and learning stuff that would be really useful for that as well.
Okay. How about you, Katherine?
Yeah, for me, two things. I recognize that I'm super lucky because I came to UT on a full ride as a part of 40 Acres. And so that really afforded me the ability to take risks. And I would say that I didn't have to make a huge sacrifice to come to this university. It really helped me have that education. So I think, honestly, the majority of my sacrifice right now has been even just with school and with my family. So my family is one that really cares about how my grades look and what type of caliber education I'm getting. And as soon as I started working on Flo, my grades went to the gutter. So I can tell you right now that in my engineering classes, I'm hovering at a C- in every single one of them. That's been the same for the past 2 semesters. And I would say since we started working on Flo, it's just been this steady decline. So I say that not lightly, because I think that when I tell people, like, I'm literally almost failing every single one of my classes, they're like, oh, that's not true. I'm like, no, like, I'm in this Flo thing, and if this doesn't work out, like, no employer is going to hire me, because I see with the employers we work with, they're like, oh, 3.7 and above, that's who we try to get. So I would say that I'm lucky that I feel like I haven't had to sacrifice, like, I'm not hungry. I'm lucky to have my parents and 40 Acres who funded me throughout college, but on the other hand, I have given a lot of academic caliber up to work on this.
Okay, and to keep the spotlight on you for a second, you are in a space, what makes it very impressive for what you've done so far is that you have excelled in a predominantly male community, right? The startup community is predominantly male, and I want to know, like, have there been some sort of obstacles that you've had to face as a female founder?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all the time. I think that I'm lucky that I also learned how to be in an all-male room when I came to be in the engineering program at UT, so it wasn't foreign to me when I walked into the startup scene. But yes, all the time, I think that people have discredited me because I don't look like what they expect their typical entrepreneur to be. For example, I remember after Longhorn Startup Lab demo day, I went to coffee with a potential investor who had kind of expressed an interest in Flo. And it was just an introductory meeting. I thought, who knows? And I just remember him sitting there with me and saying, you know what, you could probably raise money just because of how cute you are. And it wasn't terribly offensive, but it just felt like he was demeaning me, and that, Flo really wasn't a business that was going to be successful, and instead it was, like, so adorable that this cute girl was trying to get something off the ground. So I like to think that sometimes my secret weapon is that people underestimate me when I walk in the room, and then after I'm able to express more of what I'm working on, I definitely garner some more respect.
Okay, and just overall, like, how do you think that the community can do a better job? Because I know that there are a lot of groups here on campus that focus on entrepreneurship, but none that I know of that are specifically focused on women entrepreneurs.
I personally think that what's been instrumental for me has been the male leaders in the entrepreneurship community making sure that women are included. So having those male allies that are really excited to bring women into the room. Something that I'll share from my experience at Genesis, we see even just the companies that apply to us, only about 15% of them have a female founder, and that's the really easy application that you'll find online at the Genesis website. And what that tells me is that women on our campus, it's not that they don't have good ideas, it's that they don't even feel the confidence to go out there and apply for something, an opportunity like Genesis. So I think that the male-dominated entrepreneurship ecosystem can really make a difference for women by making sure that they know that they can do it and partnering with them to make sure that their ideas get off the ground equally as much as their male counterparts' ideas get off the ground.
Now that you guys are running your own startups, I just have one question. That's like, what is like some like misconceptions that people have about running their own startup?
So I was telling you this like while we were outside. So I guess we've been working on it for 2 years before we got funding, but my mom, she's about to retire from her job, and she was telling me that she wants to do her own company. She kind of just wants to work on her own thing, and she's just like, okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get an idea, then I'm going to go to VCs and pitch the idea and get funding. And I'm like, that's not how it works. Like, you have to really build something out. You have to prove it out before your startup can get off the ground like that.
Okay. What about you, Katherine?
Yeah, I think that, like Atreya said, one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's easy, because it's not. There have been a lot of times that I ask myself, like, what are we doing? This is crazy. And then the next day something amazing happens. I'm like, of course we're doing this. Like, this is the best thing ever. So a big misconception is that it's easy. Another misconception is that it's always great. I think that as entrepreneurs in general, we do a bad job of only publicizing all of the great things that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't do as good of a job as telling people, here's all the times that we messed up that led us to this great success.
Okay.
So when, from the outside looking in, people are looking at entrepreneurs, they're thinking that everything is just going swimmingly and our company is growing like crazy, and that it must be a huge success. I actually recently had a friend from a different school reach out to me and just ask about Flo, and I told him, yeah, it's really only 2 people in this company. He's like, what? You guys make it seem like it's so huge on social media, which is something that I didn't even realize we were doing, but he thought our team was at least 10 to 15 people. So I think that really the biggest misconception is that it's easy, because it's definitely not.
Okay, then that leads to one big topic, and this is like something I love to stress, because again, everybody only sees the glamour, like the articles written about you guys, oh, we got funding, oh, we got this interview, etc., right? And that's about mental health, and a lot of people in the entrepreneurship space, like, it's at an all-time high where there's like anxiety, depression, and suicide, right? So I want to know, like, what are y'all's like thoughts about this, and have you ever personally faced something like that but not had the courage to kind of display that?
I mean, I definitely haven't had any sort of suicidal thoughts, and I think that I'm lucky that we haven't had anything like that. But I would say that it always seems like with Flo and with every venture I've ever worked on, that something amazing happens, and then within the same 24 hours, something terrible happens. So it's an emotional roller coaster, and you as the entrepreneur have to realize that, you can't celebrate the wins too much, and you also can't lament the bad things too much. And as long as you keep on a general upward trend, things will continue to go well, even if you hit roadblocks. So yeah, there have been times when I'm in my room staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was really the right decision, and then something great happens after all our hard work, and I know that yes, this is definitely the right decision to keep moving.
Yep. What about you?
Yeah, so I'd say there's definitely a lot of anxiety that comes from working on this. So for example, a couple of weeks ago, we were in San Francisco, and let's just say we were paranoid that something wasn't working with our product, and because we were paranoid, it spiked my stress, it spiked my anxiety. I even said to Katherine, like you're able to spike my anxiety like no other. And after you get sort of through those moments, you realize like how much it's worth it, because you're able to accomplish so much. You're able to overcome that anxiety and that stress, and it always gets better, I'd say.
Okay.
Like there can be a moment where, for example, 2 weeks ago, where you have like peak anxiety. You're like, I didn't even know that I could be this anxious, but then after you get through it, you're like, wow, like I was able to like do so much, and that was driven by that anxiety. So it's important as well.
Yeah, and just knowing, I mean, for example, when we were going through the fundraising process, especially with the big $200K check, I remember that for 2 days, and Atreya saw me, I was so nervous. I couldn't think about anything else except for whether or not this deal would go through, and I just felt like I was totally out of my control, because we were just waiting to hear if this investor was ultimately going to put in the money to our venture. And I think that in order to maintain that level of constant like self-awareness, I had to go for runs. I had to constantly be outside. I was trying to make sure that I was listening to the right music that would calm me down. So I was consciously taking steps to make sure that I wasn't going to get so overwhelmed that something terrible might happen, because frankly, we don't have time when we're building this company to let something terrible happen to us personally, because ultimately we're the ones driving forward Flo Recruit. So anytime I feel like I get super overwhelmed, I I try to take a step back and realize that my mental health is extremely important to the success of this business, and it's worth me taking a break for the greater future of Flo.
Okay. And one thing you brought up was like about the good days and the bad days, and my brother like used to tell me this all the time, and he's like, you can't like you said, you can't celebrate the good days so much, but while you're in the good days, know that there are going to be bad days. While you're in the bad days, know that there will be good days, right? And one big thing about this statement is that you can always think about this yourself, right? But as an entrepreneur on your own, you can't just drive forward the company. So there are always people that are backing you, you know, your family and stuff. So talk about like one person in your life that has been like essential to your success thus far.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you rewind 30 minutes, you'll know that my uncle is like one of the most influential figures in my life because of the fact that my family is surrounded by people that take the easy route or take the safe route. For example, my cousin's about to finish her residency, be a doctor. One of my other cousins is like an engineer, and so many of the people in my family just take that safe route, but my uncle was the one to do entrepreneurship and take that risk. So seeing someone in my family sort of take that risk and not be like everyone else, take the safe route, you know, go to school, get a good job, it was really influential for me.
Okay.
For me, two of my closest mentors at the very beginning were Eric Huddleston and AJ Bruno from TrendKite. So I worked at TrendKite as a freshman. They had 50 people there, and now they have over 200 employees. And when I worked there, I just saw how much Eric and AJ believed in me, and they gave me brutal feedback every time I did some sort of presentation to the company. And that was invaluable, because I realized later on that because they were actually willing to spend time with me and spend time giving me that critical feedback, that really meant that they were investing in me. I later went on to do other internships and other things throughout this school, and I realized that the people who weren't willing to give me that critical feedback actually weren't invested in me seeing me succeed.
Okay.
So I think that those two were incredible. And then on top of that, I was lucky to work for them first because they never mentioned that I was a girl. They were just like, you're going to be an amazing entrepreneur, period, not an amazing female entrepreneur. And I went on later to different opportunities, and everyone just kept harping on this fact of like, you're a female entrepreneur. Like, that's so great. It's so great that a female entrepreneur is doing all these amazing things. And sometimes I just wanted to be an entrepreneur, not the modifier of, you know, it's really good what you're doing as a girl. So I was lucky to work for them first because they just saw me as someone who had the ability to potentially do amazing things later on if they were willing to invest in me from day one.
Okay. And as founders, you guys have made a lot of decisions. There have been I'm sure there have been decisions where you have to kind of measure it and see what's better, what's not better. And obviously the trade-offs sometimes leave you disappointed, right? So have there been any regrets that you've had in terms of decision making or just overall for the company?
I think you have a story of before I was even part of the company.
Yeah. So here's a good story. So when we were first starting Flo, when we first initially had the idea, the initial team was me and 3 other of my friends in my sorority. And none of us had technical talent. We were really just trying to come together and write up mock-ups of what this might look like. And we were looking for someone technical. So we originally were working with another, he was a student at the time, another team member. And when we made the decision to work with him, we said, hey, it's great, we'll pay you for your work, and then in exchange we'll get the code and we'll get the product and be able to deliver it to our customers. And that was because he really didn't want to be a part of the team. He just saw this as a way for him to make a lot of cash for a student. And we were excited to work with him because we felt like he was super smart and he would help us realize this dream. Later on, long story short, after he finished the product, he came to me, and when we were supposed to go through the transaction of me paying him in cash and him giving the product over, he said, Katherine, you know what? I think that I should own about 80% of this business, and at minimum I would accept 51%, and you should also pay me this cash. And at first I was like, oh wow, maybe he's interested in coming on as a technical co-founder. That's great. We really do need someone. And in response to that, he said, no, I actually just want to be an independent contractor, but also own the business. And first of all, I was like, is that even legally possible? I'm sitting in this meeting with him, and to this day, I'm not really sure because I was so appalled at what was happening. But ultimately, we weren't really able to resolve the conflict well because when we initially made the agreement with him, we signed nothing. He was a friend of a friend, and we thought that we were on the same page and that this handshake agreement would work. And in reality, it didn't end up working. So I think one of my biggest regrets is not having just assigned something between us, because had that happened, we probably wouldn't have had that conflict because it would have been clear that we were both on the same page. So ultimately, I think that was a mistake that I made, and had we just had that signed agreement, even if it was just me writing out a one-page, this is what's going to happen in this agreement, we wouldn't have had such a problem. But I think he's doing very well now, and frankly, there was no hard feelings after we did all of that because we ended up being successful in finding Atreya, who was excited about joining the team.
I mean, at the end of the day, it is just business as well, right? And I mean, outside of Flo, even, do you have like any like regrets of making certain decisions that that you wish you hadn't?
Well, I mean, let me talk about Flo in that when I first joined the team, it was Katherine and there were two other girls from her sorority that were on the project. And at that time, like, I call it a project because it was a project. Like, even not this past summer, but the summer before that, like, Katherine and I were talking and we were developing the product while these two other people weren't really working on it. And then even when we came back into last fall, it still felt like a project to me, and I guess to Katherine as well.
No. I did not think it was a project.
Well, not in that sort of sense, but what I'd say about that is one of my regrets is that we weren't like working on it as much as we could have. Like, for example, we were only meeting maybe once a week last fall, and last spring when we first started working together, we weren't meeting that much to actually work on Flo, and it felt like that picked up a lot, especially considering we worked on it full time this past summer. So one thing that I wonder about is, let's say we were working on it as much last fall and last spring as we are now, how much more could we have accomplished that we haven't accomplished already?
Okay.
True. And then even from my perspective, I remember thinking I know this is what I want to do. Like, how on earth do I motivate the people to actually work with me? Because I remember having those weekly meetings and thinking like, oh my God, I'm probably gonna lose these people because like they have tests, they have quizzes, they have other priorities, and if I push them too hard, then they'll realize that Flo's not worth it because their grades are falling or they can't hang out with their friends. So for me, it was always that constant dichotomy of how on earth do I get them to be motivated and continue working with me without pushing them too far.
And how did you figure out how to do that?
I'm not sure if we figured it out, or if I think from my perspective with Atreya, I think that you really just started seeing the future and the vision of what this could be, especially when we started getting customers. It becomes a lot more real. Mm-hmm. And it became a lot more real for me too when we got customers, because oh my gosh, like there are real people using this. So I think that in the beginning, when you're just building this product with a huge vision and no one is using it, mm-hmm. It's hard to make sure that you're working on it every single day and making sure that people around you can see that final vision. But once you have people actually using the product, everything changes. Okay,
so then speaking of the future, then where do you guys see like Flo like 10 years, maybe 5 years down the road?
I think we'll definitely grow in terms of the number of people we have on our team. Mm-hmm. There's really, I think, two main components of our future vision. One is what we briefly touched on earlier, is that we think that with the information we're collecting about candidates early in the recruitment process, we'll actually be able to detect bias in the recruitment process and deliver that back to companies so they can attack their own prejudices internally. That's much different than a company just saying, oh, check, we tackled diversity because we went to the Grace Hopper conference, or we went to a Black fraternity and presented about our business. Instead, we could actually deliver back to a company exactly what is happening in their own recruitment process. And then the second piece is personalization. I think our generation and younger really wants to feel like companies are talking directly to them and wants that person, that individual, to come join their team. And so large companies are really going to struggle to make sure that individual feels wanted. So part of our vision is to be able to give companies that ability to allow their employees to leave feedback on candidates that is then used in any sort of email communication with the candidate, so that candidate knows that they're special, that they belong at this company, and that this is an individualized recruitment process that's tailored towards them.
So, I mean, we both share our vision for the company in the future. Definitely more team members. Right now we're actually going to probably interview someone to join the team and start in a sales position. But I feel like there definitely needs to be a spike in growth in the near future. Because we were talking about this earlier, outside, just the two of us, it's not really possible to achieve everything we want to achieve. For example, I mentioned Campus Recruiting Forum we were at a couple days ago, and there were 60 people that we could have pitched Flo to, but because it was just the two of us, we really couldn't hit all 60. Like, it was really hard. So just having the ability to have more people, to approach more people, to sell the product to, and then to grow the product itself to be more sellable and better for the customer is something that I see in our near future.
Okay, and what do you guys envision, like, or not envision necessarily, but have you guys ever thought about, after Flo, have you had any, like, passions outside of Flo that you would want to pursue, like any side projects or anything like that?
I mean, for me, I feel like right now I'm so focused on Flo. I see myself just continuing to be an entrepreneur, whether, hopefully Flo continues, and I think that it will, but I see myself being a serial entrepreneur throughout my career, and I can't imagine working for another business unless I was so bought into their vision. So for me, it's starting other companies.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on the same wavelength in that sort of sense. Like, doing my internships, working for bigger companies, it really didn't feel like that was my passion, sort of. But being an entrepreneur and being able to really have an impact and drive the vision of the entire company towards a certain direction is really, really important to me, or has become important to me. So I feel like entrepreneurship is definitely in my future. But after you asked that question, I was like, wow, I haven't thought about that like ever at all, because I'm just so focused on Flo right now.
Well, that's how you know it's like the right startup then, right? So then where can they find you? So if they're interested in like working with Flo, or if they want to just check you guys out, where can they find you?
So they can find us at our website, flowrecruit.com. See our nice little shirts. You can also find us on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook. And of course, you can find us just between the two of us. So my email is Katherine at Flo Recruit.
Atreya at FloRecruit.com.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. This was Katherine Allen and Atreya from Flo Recruit. And make sure you share this with a UT student. And there's a link in the description to sign up for like the email list if you want to be notified when this episode or the next episode is out. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
3, 2, 1, action.
I forgot what I said. Hold on.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, action.
And thank you guys so much for coming here, Katherine Allen and Atreya Misra. I should probably rerun that. Okay, so just say please welcome Katherine Allen and Atreya Misra.
Thanks for having us.
So glad to be here.
Sorry, I'm gonna redo that. My voice cracked. This happened with Kush as well. I'm like so done with this. Okay. Please welcome Katherine Allen and Atreya Misra. Thank you guys so much for being
Glad
here.
to be here.
This is just so awkward. I'm just gonna. But I feel like.
You just want the flow going?
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh my God.
Flow puns are plentiful.
I even said that in the email. I feel like that was unoriginal. Okay.
I actually didn't think of it, and then I was like, hey, our company's name flowed. But, okay, we can go.